Hey guys, today I want to tell you about Touchkey. It's a touchscreen toolbar for Windows computers. I use it for painting in Photoshop on my Surface Pro 3. Of course, the Surface Pro 3 doesn't have any express keys like you might find in a Wacom Cintiq or something like that, so and I don't want to fiddle with these small buttons inside the menus and toolbars inside the software itself. This makes my tools and shortcuts that I use very frequently very accessible and easy to use. I'm going to go ahead and first show you guys what I have set up and how I use it, and then I'll go ahead and do a tutorial on how you can make your own. I'm not going to edit this video, I'm going to try to do it all in one take, so I'll try to be as quick and concise and thorough as possible and not ramble on, and I apologize for any flubs that might occur. So let's get started. This is my toolbar. You can see that I can drag it around anywhere using my finger or my pin actually, so that's very nice. I have all kinds of shortcuts set up in here, so I'll go ahead and show you some of the basic ones. The most important buttons for me are these ones: undo, redo, the brush tool, and Alt, which is the eyedropper tool. For painting, those are the ones, and also change my brush size with these two buttons up here. So I'll go ahead and show you how those work real quick, and then we'll run through some of the other things that I use. So you can see I can tap this brush tool and I can go ahead and paint like I normally would. And I can hit back and forward and they work perfectly, just like you'd want them to work. I can change my brush size. You see the cursor on screen. I can hold that actually, and or I can tap it to change my brush size. I can use this Alt key to color pick, and of course that's very important if you paint in if you do digital art. Of course you understand the importance of that function, and the brush tool here is very easy to toggle back and forth. When I'm in, say, the lasso tool, I can easily get to the brush tool. Up here I've got various things. I've got various selection tools. I've got right here is the lasso. This one toggles between my various lasso tools. That button is set to Shift L, which if you use Photoshop you know toggles. Holding the Shift key lets you toggle between various types of one tool. I've got my marquee tool here, which helps me make square selections, or I can tap it again. Again, it's set to Shift M, that particular button. I'll show you how to make buttons, but this lets me easily make circular selections. I can hold, while I'm making a selection, I can hold the Shift key to lock that into being circular. I can hold the Alt key, and you can't see that, but it locks it in at the center. I can hold the space key and move that selection around. Hopefully you can see that. I can even hold Alt and Shift to lock it in place in terms of its how circular it is, and lock it from the center. So this is really powerful. I've got toggle, flip screen rather. I've got free transform, which lets me easily transform any selection. I've got a paint buckets rather, the eraser, these various Shift, Alt, Escape, Deletes. So for example, I can hit Enter there. If I made a mark, some of these paintings, and I make a selection, of course I can hit Delete, and that deletes that stuff. And I've got cut down here, so I can cut and I can paste in place. I've also got paste selection. I'll go ahead and grab my layers palette, and you can see I've got new layers. You can see down here in the lower right hand corner that I'm creating new layers by tapping this button. And I also have, I'll go ahead and hit back until I get rid of all of those. And I also have duplicate layer, which is right beside there, and also merge layers. So the really nice thing about Touchkey is that you can run multiple panels. So you can see right here I've got a second panel. I really like this because this has some of my lesser used shortcuts that I'm not using constantly while painting, but things that I don't want to have to go through menus to do on a touch screen, things that I used to do with the keyboard shortcut. So for example, I have easy access to the number pad for starters, so I can press 1. Let's see. I can press, you see I'm pressing, look up here where you see opacity. I can press 6, and that makes it go to 60%, or I can hit 0 and make it go to 100%. Another really cool thing is that you can do multi-touch between multiple panels. So you see over here where there's the flow, which controls how much ink comes out of the brush. When I'm painting, I want to lower the flow. The keyboard shortcut for that is Shift and then a number. And so I can press Shift on one panel and then press 6 on the other panel, and you can see up here it lowered the flow down to 60%. Really, really nice. And then I can toggle on my layers, my let's see. Well, I'm having some technical difficulties. These normally work. This layers one is working. Here we go. There we go. That one toggles on my brush palette. That one toggles on Magic Picker, which is a really nice plugin that is a color wheel. I've even got canvas size shortcuts, of course, even levels, save, new document, close document. I've also got this button down here that closes Touchkey. That has to do with another program called Autohotkey that I've mapped to end the process. That's a little more advanced. If you have never heard of Autohotkey, that's maybe for a different video altogether. Now that you've seen how powerful this program is, I'll go ahead and show you how to make your own. So to get started, open up your web browser, go to Google and type Touchkey, hit search. You'll see this second link. It has these characters here, and this is what the website looks like. You'll see this button that says 4 Windows. Go ahead and download that. It's a very small folder. It'll download very fast. Go ahead and open it up, and now you'll see all these files. You'll have to extract it from this compressed folder. It's in a .zip folder. I use 7-zip to extract compressed folders. You can use WinZip or WinRAR or 7-zip or whatever you want. Hopefully you know how to do that. So go ahead and hit extract, and go ahead and we'll go ahead and put it on our desktop. You can later move it to your documents folder, which is where I store my Touchkey folders so that they're out of the way. But for now, I'll just put it on the desktop, and I'll go ahead and put them on the desktop in a folder called Touchkey. And I'll hit OK. And that extracted, and now I'm going to close that and go to my desktop. You can see this Touchkey folder. Now this looks very confusing. Most of these files here you won't have to deal with. The only ones that you really need to know are macro portrait, macro editor 2, and the settings file. So really just 4 files are the only ones you need. So to get started, go ahead and, well actually you'll also need this Touchkey application button down here, which is what launches the application after we've created it. You can see down here on my taskbar I have shortcuts for both of my 2 panels that I use, and those are just shortcuts to this Touchkey application file here that I've put on my taskbar. Close those. So I'll go ahead and when you first get the program, and what you'll want to do is open Macro Editor 2. And this is a really nice tool because I didn't even realize this was here when I first made my toolbars. I did them all manually with the code, but then I realized that there's this really nice editor here that basically lets you create toolbars, and it automates the entire process. So you can see here, I'll go ahead and make this bigger. This is going to be the layout of our toolbar, and you can add the number of vertical columns pretty easily. You can add buttons. You can reduce the number of columns after the fact. You can click and hit remove button, add button. You can make button size bigger or smaller. I use 60. That just works for me. It's a totally arbitrary number. Make them too small, you won't be able to touch them. Too big, they won't fit on your screen, of course. So let's go ahead and make something. I'm going to go ahead and make these buttons bigger. You can see, let's not get ahead of ourselves. When you click on a button, you can move over here to this right side of the screen where you'll see button settings. And when you have clicked on the button that you want to edit, you can easily edit the width and also the height. And I like big buttons for the functions that I use most often, like undo, redo, eyedropper, and brush. And also my brush size settings. So we're going to go ahead and make a really simple panel just as a demonstration, and I'll go ahead and make two buttons that are big for undo and redo, and then I'll go ahead and make an eyedropper tool. And then I'll go ahead and make this extra column. I'll get rid of these buttons. And then we'll add some basic Photoshop tool shortcuts on these 4 small buttons. So right here we're going to go ahead and let me run through some of these other settings real quick. So when you click on the button you want to edit, and I showed you how to edit the size, now you see this type drop down, and these are the type of buttons that you're going to be using. You saw that I had basic shortcuts, and then I had the Alt key, which was a hold button. So let's see, the 0 option is the normal kind of, you tap the button and it toggles something on. So for example, you want to select the brush tool, so it would be a type 0 normal button that would let you tap the brush button and select it. It sort of toggles the B key on and off in Photoshop, which is the shortcut for brush. Hold is what I used for Alt, which is, it basically lets you hold down the button and the shortcut is activated when you're holding it down physically on your screen with your thumb, and only when you're holding it. It's very, let's see, there's others that are less important. I use vertical and horizontal sliders. Those are ones that you can actually roll your finger left and right over the button to make it do different functions. So if you select vertical slider, you can select 2 different functions, whether or not you roll your finger from top to bottom over the button or bottom to top. I'll actually give you guys a quick demonstration. I use this for only one thing, which is the nudge tool, which is the arrow keys in Photoshop. So if I have a selection, and you can see up here, I've got the horizontal and vertical sliders. So if I roll my finger over these from top to bottom, you can see I'm slowly nudging that selection up and down. It's a little more precise than grabbing it with your stylus, and I can also nudge it to the left and right. Let's go back to our toolbar editor, and now we've got caption. Now you can see on my toolbar I've got all these nice images. These are images icons that I created myself using Photoshop. Basically I got online and found icons, and I took some screenshots of Photoshop and made these. This program does not come with icons like this. You'll have to make them yourself or find them online. So what you can do instead is just use a plain text caption. So we'll go ahead and type undo. You can see over here this changed the label on this button to undo. And I'll make this one redo. So those are what you'll see if you don't take the time to make icons like I did. So this background color, you can set a background color if you want. I don't like that, so I'll go ahead and delete that. Image is where, once you've created the images that you want, I have made them as .png files so that they have transparent backgrounds, and I put them in my Touchkey folder in a folder called IMG. You can call it whatever you want. The important thing is that they're somewhere where they're safe, and you can see all my icons here. I just put them in there after they're created, and once you want to add an icon, you can select these 3 dots and then navigate to that img folder and maybe select undo. And now the important thing, oops, this is very important. Make sure you select the right type. I cannot stress how many headaches you'll save yourself if you make sure you always select the right type of button under this drop down. If you want it to be a normal type, make sure it's a normal. If you want it to be a hold, make sure it's a hold. Otherwise, you'll have to go back in and fix it and it won't work right. So you can see that icon added. I could get rid of that undo text if I wanted. It looks a little nicer. So the most important thing is when I go down to hotkey, in Photoshop, this is where I just input whatever hotkey I want. So in Photoshop, undo is Control-Alt-Z. So you can see that I just inputted that, and now that's set. So I'll go over to redo, and I'll go ahead and add an image, which will be my redo. And that added that. I'll go ahead and delete that caption. It looks a little nicer. And in Photoshop, it's Control-Shift-Z for redo. Now I want to make an Alt key for an eyedropper. I will make sure that I put it on a hold key. If you don't set it as hold, it won't work. Make sure you do that. You can always go back and edit it later, but it's much better if you just make sure you do it from the beginning. I'll get rid of that caption, and I'll go in and, oops, I'll select an image that I made called Alt. Well, actually, I made the dropper. I select image, and hopefully that dropper image will, there we go. And now I'll go ahead and press Alt. And now I have created a dropper button. So for these, I'll just go ahead and make some, I won't do images, I'll just go ahead and make some quick tool shortcuts. So I'll do brush, and I'll go down and press B. That's what I want my brush tool shortcut to be. Of course, you can always go into Photoshop and edit your keyboard shortcuts to whatever you want them to be in Photoshop, and then come out here and use your custom shortcuts as Touchkey shortcuts. That's a little more advanced, so let's get back to it. I made a brush tool shortcut, and I'll go ahead and make a lasso tool shortcut. I'll go ahead and call that lasso. I'll make eraser, and make that E, and I'm making sure these are normal type buttons. Oops, I just want to make it plain old E for the hotkey. And this one will be, let's see, how about cut? And I'll go down here and I'll press Control X. Actually, I'll go ahead, instead of eraser, I'll make this copy so I can demonstrate that. And that's of course Control C. So now I've got copy and cut. So now we've made our shortcut. We'll go ahead and press save. Make sure you press save before closing this. Navigate back out to your desktop or wherever you have your Touchkey folder. You'll need to save it over macro. Make sure you save it to macro, press save. Do you want to save over this? Yep, you do. Now we'll go ahead and I'll close my Touchkey folder, and I'll close this editor, and I'll go back to my desktop, and we'll load our toolbar that we just made. Click Touchkey file down here. This is where the settings are that you'll tell Touchkey what kind of device you're using. This is really important. I'm using the Surface Pro 3, so I'll click Surface Pro 3. This is the position. You can lock it into the left, right, or floating. I like floating. I'll show you the left and right positions. They're a little bit annoying. I like floating. It gives me a lot more flexibility to position my toolbars where I want them. You can other settings on whether or not you want them to be on top of the taskbar, below the taskbar. So I'll go ahead and show you this. I press OK, and now we've got our wonderful Touchkey toolbar. If you need to get back to, if you selected the wrong device, for example, go down here to the system tray at the bottom right corner of Windows, right-click on, you might have to open this arrow, find the Touchkey icon, right-click and press Settings, then you can go back in if you want to put it in the lower right, and lock it there, you can. Now, the thing about this is that it's locked down there so you can't move it around. When the pen cursor comes near it, it disappears. You might like that. I don't like that. It annoys me. I want to be able to move it around. If I want to paint down here, I don't want to constantly have it be popping up and back. And you can also, I'll show you later how to set the toolbar to a low opacity so it's very transparent, so it's not blocking your painting anyway. So I'll go ahead and click Settings and change it back to floating. Click OK, and then I'll go ahead and right-click down here and press Quit and reload it with the correct settings that I like. Now I can grab it with either my pen or my finger and drag it around. So let's load in Photoshop and make sure this works. So when I'm painting here, I'll go ahead and grab the brush tool and paint. And I press back and it works. And I press forward and it works. I'll grab the lasso tool. I lasso, and now I press cut. I meant to press a paste. Well, paste works anyway. I meant to create cut and paste rather than cut and copy, but you can still see that copy works as well. I'm using my keyboard to press paste, so I created another selection. So those buttons both work, and I'll go back to the brush tool and make sure our Alt key works. I'm holding it down. Doesn't seem to be working. Let's go back and check and make sure our code is correct. Sorry about that. I'll open up my file and I'll go ahead and, for some reason, I'm not sure why it does this. If you want to make the Alt key, I'll just show you a quick fix. Open up your macro, and these are Unicode numbers. This is a little technical maybe, but these numbers, each number corresponds to a key on the keyboard that the system understands, and basically this code is telling it to press Alt and then release Alt, but it's a type 1 button, which is a hold button anyway. So go ahead and delete this minus. Make sure there's no spaces in between here, so it's just plus 18, which corresponds to the Alt key. Press save. I'm not sure why it does that, but that's a quick workaround for you guys. Sorry about that. So now when I go ahead and close my Touchkey toolbar, and now I reload it, now my Alt key works. I'm not sure why the program does it like that. I think that if we go in and open Macro Editor 1, which is just creates code, and press push and hold, and let's see what it makes when I press Alt. You can see that for some reason the Macro Editor 2 makes the button incorrectly for push and hold keys. That's just a bug, I guess, so keep that in mind for push and hold keys. You can open the key map editor, which is the Macro Editor 1, and make sure you press push and hold and go down here and select where it says Macro 1 and you can enter whatever you want. Press Alt and then press Add, and you'll need to copy that and go back into the original macro file. You can edit it the way that I showed you by deleting that minus 18, or you can just paste it in there and that'll create another button on your toolbar. That's just a bug, I guess, unfortunately. So go ahead and close that. We did find a quick workaround, fortunately, so we didn't waste too much time in this video. So you can see that my color picker works wonderfully now, and I can press back and forward and it all works exactly like I want. I'll show you guys a couple quick other functions before I go. This is really important. So you see macro and macro portrait. These are the two files that tell Touchkey what your toolbar looks like. So when you open it up, you can see the code that corresponds to your toolbar. Now, the toolbar we just made, we saved as macro. Macro portrait still has this default text in here, which is just sort of a toolbar that, well, let me explain real quick. Macro portrait determines what your toolbars look like when you're holding your device in portrait mode as a tablet. I have my device docked, so I won't show you that, but when you turn your tablet 90 degrees and hold it in portrait mode, it will draw the toolbar rather from this macro portrait file. So what you need to do is, this is really important, go ahead and copy this text and paste it into macro portrait and hit save and then close that, and now your toolbar will be the same whether or not you have it in standard landscape mode or you're viewing your tablet on the go in portrait mode. The other really important thing to show you guys is this settings menu. You see opacity. That's really the only thing in here that you really need to remember that you can't edit from the macro editor too. I like to keep my opacity down around 20 or so. This gives me a transparent toolbar. I'll show you. So I change the value to 20, I save and close, and now I right click down here and quit, and I'll open Touchkey back up. Well, let me close it again. Make sure to close it first before you open settings, and then go back and edit the opacity then. That was my error. So I save and close, and now I'll open it. And now you see we have a very transparent toolbar that is not nearly so obtrusive. You can even crank the opacity down even lower, but I can still see the labels and my icons and work, and it still works just fine. It's just transparent. One more thing I want to note is that this is just, because Touchkey is a portable app, you don't install it. That's a little bit of technical explanation, but it runs down here in the system tray. If you try to open it again this way, if I re-click it, you'll see down here in the bottom right-hand corner that it opens two instances of the program. You can see them both out here. And this is very annoying because sometimes the buttons will work and sometimes they won't when you have multiple instances open. When you click them down here in the system tray, that minimizes them and maximizes them. Unfortunately, they don't run down here in the taskbar, they run in the system tray. So be careful about opening multiple instances. Sometimes you'll have to click this arrow and you'll see multiple instances up here and you'll have to manually close them. Just something to keep in mind. I think that's all, guys. I hope this was really helpful. I'm sorry if the video was very long. I wanted to be thorough and show you guys how to use this tool. It can be a little bit hard to use. Sometimes you'll have to go in and troubleshoot when a key isn't working, so if you really don't like tinkering, you might have some trouble with this, but hopefully this tutorial really hit all the important stuff that you guys need to know. And I love this tool. It makes painting in Photoshop so easy. I don't even use my keyboard anymore. I just love my toolbars. I paint just as easily on the go as I do on my desktop. It's great. So thanks for watching, and good luck.